The rain hammered against the windshield, blurring the neon lights outside. Anna gripped the steering wheel tighter, her knuckles white. Her phone buzzed on the passenger seat, a notification from a friend. "Check this out. Isn't this your husband?" Her heart sank. With trembling fingers, she opened the link. A TikTok video loaded. The screen lit up with a man laughing in the frame. The man had his arm around a younger woman, their faces close. Anna's breath caught. It was him, or someone who looked just like him. The same sharp jawline. The same crooked smile. Even the mole near his left eye. Her chest tightened, the air feeling too thick to breathe. Her husband had been declared dead 2 years ago. A boating accident. His body never found. She stared at the phone, her vision swimming. The video played on a loop. In the background, waves lapped against a sunny shore. Not here. Not this stormy night. The laughter from the video felt cruel, mocking. Anna pulled over, the tires skidding on wet asphalt. She killed the engine, sitting in suffocating silence. Her pulse thudded in her ears. Was it him? Could it be? She scrolled through the comments. Looks like someone's living their best life. Goals. Cute couples. Her fingers hovered over the screen, icy and unsteady. Anna hit play again, this time focusing on the details. A tattoo peeked out from under his sleeve. She knew that tattoo. It was his. A phoenix rising from the ashes. She clutched the phone to her chest, her mind racing. Was it really possible? Had he faked his death? And why? For her, the woman in the video twirled her hair, leaning into him. Anna's stomach churned, the acid rising. The rain outside grew louder, drowning out her thoughts. She replayed the video. Again. And again. The face. The tattoo. The way he moved. It all pointed to one horrifying conclusion. Her husband was alive. And he was happy. With someone else. Anna's hands trembled as she fumbled with her phone, trying to pause the video. Her reflection stared back from the dark screen, pale and wide-eyed. The rain streaked down her car windows, mirroring the tears that now blurred her vision. Her chest heaved as a sob threatened to break free. She swallowed hard, forcing herself to focus. She needed to know more. Her thumb hovered over the TikTok username, @SunnyEscape. The name felt like a cruel joke, a taunt. She clicked it. The profile opened and there he was. His face, smiling in video after video. Each one a snapshot of a life she didn't recognize. A life without her. Her stomach twisted as she scrolled. There he was playing guitar on a beach. Cooking dinner in a bright, airy kitchen. Dancing with the woman in a way that felt too natural, too intimate. The caption on one video read, "Grateful for a second chance at life, Red Heart." Anna's vision darkened at the edges, a cold numbness settling over her. The betrayal cut deep, but the confusion was worse. How? Why? Her fingers shook as she typed a comment, her heart pounding. Who is this man? Why does he look like my husband? She hit send and stared at the screen, waiting. The rain outside slowed to a soft drizzle, as if the storm itself held its breath. Minutes passed, but there was no response. She checked the profile again. Her comment was gone. Blocked. Her breath caught, and anger surged through her veins. She slammed her hands against the steering wheel, the horn blaring in protest. The sound jolted her back to reality. This wasn't over. Not yet. Anna opened her contacts and scrolled to Detective Morris, the officer who had handled her husband's case. She hesitated, her thumb hovering over the call button. What would she even say? That her husband, presumed dead, was alive and living a fantasy life with someone else? It sounded insane. But so did this moment. Her husband, or the man she thought he was, had secrets. And Anna was determined to uncover them. Anna pressed the call button, her pulse racing. The line rang once, twice, then clicked. Morris here. His voice was gruff, familiar, grounding her in the storm of her thoughts. "It's Anna McCall," she said, her voice shaky but firm. There was a pause. "Anna? It's been a while. Is everything okay?" She swallowed hard, gripping the phone so tightly her knuckles ached.
"No.
"It's not.
I
I think my husband is alive." The silence on the other end stretched uncomfortably long. "Anna," Morris finally said, his tone cautious, "are you sure? You know we searched." "I'm sure," she interrupted, her voice sharper now. "I just saw him. On TikTok. He's alive, detective. He's with someone else." Her words hung in the air like a fog, thick and suffocating. Morris exhaled loudly. "Send me the link." Anna quickly forwarded the video, her fingers fumbling on the screen. "I'll call you back after I look into this," he said, his tone clipped, professional. The line went dead. Anna stared at her phone, her reflection faint in the darkened screen. The rain had stopped, leaving the night eerily quiet. She felt exposed, as though the world was watching her unravel. Her mind raced. Was Morris taking her seriously? Would he dig deep, or dismiss this as grief playing tricks on her? The questions piled up, suffocating her. Unable to sit still, she stepped out of the car. The cold night air bit at her skin, but she barely felt it. Her thoughts were locked on the man in the videos. She could almost hear his laugh, feel the warmth of his hand in hers. It was a laugh she hadn't heard in years. Not even before the accident. The thought stung, sharp and cruel. What if he had been planning this all along? The idea made her stomach churn. She paced beside the car, her boots splashing in shallow puddles. She glanced at her phone again, willing it to ring. A sound startled her, a faint rustle from the shadows nearby. Anna froze, her breath caught in her throat. "Hello," she called, her voice unsteady. No response. The darkness seemed to close in around her, heavy and watchful. For the first time that night, fear took root. And it wasn't just fear of the truth. It was fear of what, or who, might be lurking in the shadows. Anna's pulse quickened as the rustling sound grew louder. It wasn't the wind. It was deliberate. Her eyes darted to the shadows, where faint outlines blurred with the darkness. "Who's there?" she called again, her voice cracking. The only answer was the drip of water from the trees and the distant hum of traffic. Her phone was in her hand. She gripped it tightly, her thumb hovering over the flashlight button. She hesitated. Part of her didn't want to see. But the rustling grew closer, and her instincts screamed at her to act. With a trembling finger, she switched on the light. The beam cut through the darkness, illuminating a narrow stretch of wet asphalt and glistening leaves. Nothing. Her breath hitched as she scanned left, then right. Still nothing. But just as she started to lower the phone, she saw it. A pair of muddy footprints, fresh, leading toward her car. Her stomach flipped, ice spreading through her veins. She hadn't heard anyone approach. Anna spun around, the flashlight jerking wildly. "Who's there?" she demanded, louder this time. Her voice echoed in the silence, sounding small and desperate. And then, a figure stepped into the edge of the light. A man. Tall, broad-shouldered, with his hood pulled low over his face. Anna stumbled back, her feet slipping on the wet pavement. "Stay back," she shouted, holding the phone up like a shield. The man didn't move. For a long, agonizing moment, they stood frozen, the light bouncing off the rain-soaked ground between them. "Anna," the man said, his voice low, gravelly. Her breath caught. She knew that voice. It wasn't just familiar, it was unmistakable. "James," she whispered, barely able to say the name. The man stepped closer, into the full beam of the flashlight. It was him, her husband, alive, and staring at her with an expression she couldn't read, somewhere between regret and fear. Her legs felt weak, the world tilting. "How?" she started, but the words stuck in her throat. James raised a hand, as if to calm her. But there was something in his eyes, something cold, that stopped her short.
"You weren't supposed to find me," he said.
Anna's heart slammed against her ribs. The rain began again, soft and steady, drowning the silence between them. Anna's mind raced, her thoughts a chaotic blur. She took a step back, her flashlight shaking. James moved forward, his boots splashing in the shallow puddles. "Don't come any closer," she warned, her voice brittle. But he didn't stop. The rain streamed down his face, his features etched with something darker than regret. "You weren't supposed to see that video," he said, his tone sharp, almost accusatory. Her stomach churned. "You're alive." She couldn't even form the words. "Faked it." James finished for her, his voice bitter.
"Yeah, Anna, I did."
The admission hit her like a punch to the chest. She stumbled backward, her legs shaking. "Why?" Her voice cracked, and her hands trembled. "Why would you do this?"
"To me?"
"To us." James stopped, his jaw tightening. "I didn't have a choice," he said, his voice low, almost too soft to hear over the rain. "No choice." Anna's anger flared, cutting through the fear. "You had a choice when you disappeared. When you left me to grieve for you. I did it for you," he snapped, his voice rising. The words stunned her into silence. "For me?" she repeated, disbelief dripping from every syllable. James ran a hand through his wet hair, his frustration evident. "There are things you don't know, Anna. Things I couldn't tell you. I was in too deep." "With hers?" Anna spat, the image of the woman from the TikTok flashing in her mind. James flinched, but he didn't deny it. "It's not what you think," he said, though the guilt in his eyes told a different story. Anna laughed, a hollow, bitter sound. "You let me believe you were dead. You let me bury an empty casket. Do you even understand what you did to me?" Her voice broke, the weight of her grief and betrayal crashing over her. James stepped closer, his hand reaching out. But Anna recoiled, her flashlight wobbling as she held it up like a barrier. "Stay away," she hissed, her voice trembling with rage and fear. James froze, his hand falling to his side. "You weren't supposed to find out," he said again, quieter this time. "Not like this." "Then how?" Anna demanded, tears streaming down her face, mingling with the rain. "How was I supposed to find out, James? Or was I never supposed to?" His silence was deafening. And in that silence, Anna felt the truth settle, cold and suffocating. James had chosen this, chosen to leave her behind. And now, he stood before her, a ghost in the flesh, unraveling the fragile threads of her reality. The silence between them was unbearable, stretched tight like a wire ready to snap. James opened his mouth, then closed it again, as if weighing his words. But Anna had no patience left. "Say something," she shouted, her voice echoing off the empty street. "Tell me why you did this. Tell me the truth, James." His shoulders slumped, and for the first time, he looked small, defeated. "I couldn't come back," he said, his voice barely audible over the rain. "If I did, they would have killed you." The words hit her like a slap. "What?" she said, her tone sharp with disbelief.
"Who? What are you talking about?"
James rubbed his face, water dripping from his fingers. "It's complicated," he muttered. "Complicated?" Anna's voice rose, raw with anger. "You faked your death, left me to grieve, and built a new life with someone else. Complicated doesn't even begin to cover it." James winced, but his gaze stayed locked on hers. "I owed people, Anna. Dangerous people. Debts I couldn't repay. They came after me, threatened to come after you. I had to disappear." Her chest heaved, her mind spinning. "You could have told me," she snapped. "We could have figured it out together. But instead, you ran. You abandoned me. And now you're what? Living on a beach, playing house with some girl who twirls her hair in your videos?" James's face darkened, his jaw tightening.
She's not what you think, he said, his voice low and cold.
Anna let out a bitter laugh. Oh, really? Because she looks pretty comfortable in your new life. James stepped closer, and this time Anna didn't back away. She's part of the cover, he said, his tone urgent. I had to make it look real. If they even suspected I was alive and still connected to you, they'd come for you, Anna. You are safer without me. Her heart pounded, her anger warring with the faintest flicker of doubt. And you just decided that for me? She said, her voice trembling. You decided what I could handle? What my life should look like? James's eyes softened, a flash of the man she used to know breaking through. I thought I was protecting you, he said quietly, even if it meant losing everything. Anna's breath hitched, her tears mixing with the rain. Then why are you here now? She whispered. James hesitated, his gaze darting past her, into the shadows. Because I think they found me, he said, his voice barely more than a whisper. The words sent a chill down her spine. And for the first time that night, Anna realized the danger wasn't just in the past. It was here.
Now. And it was closing in.
Anna's heart raced as she instinctively glanced over her shoulder, scanning the darkness behind her. The rain had slowed to a light drizzle, but the night felt heavier, pressing in from all sides. Who found you? She asked, her voice trembling. What are you talking about? James stepped closer, his expression grim. They've been watching. I've been careful, but the video must have slipped through somehow. When you commented, Anna. He paused, his jaw tightening. When I commented, she repeated, her blood running cold. You're saying they saw it? James nodded, his face pale. It's possible. If they're monitoring my account, they could have connected the dots. Anna felt the ground sway beneath her feet. You're telling me that because I tried to figure out the truth, I'm in danger now. James grabbed her shoulders, his grip firm but not harsh. Listen to me. You didn't know. This isn't your fault. She pulled away, shaking her head. Don't do that. Don't tell me it's not my fault when you're the one who faked your death. You dragged me into this. James's shoulders sagged, guilt flashing across his face. I didn't want this. I thought I could keep you out of it.
But now.
A sharp noise cut through the air. A car door slamming. Both of them froze. Anna's eyes darted to the end of the street, where the faint glow of headlights illuminated the rain-soaked pavement. A black SUV was parked, its engine humming. James grabbed her wrist, his grip urgent. We have to go.
Now.
Anna resisted, panic bubbling to the surface. Go where? What is happening, James? There's no time to explain, he hissed, his voice low and tense. If they're here, they're not here to talk. The headlights grew brighter as the SUV began to creep forward. Anna's stomach twisted as a figure stepped out of the passenger side, silhouetted against the light. Move, James barked, pulling her toward the car. She stumbled, her body on autopilot, her mind struggling to catch up. As they reached her car, James yanked open the driver's side door. Get in. What about you? She asked, her voice trembling. I'll drive, he said, already sliding into the seat. Just trust me. Trust. The word felt foreign, bitter in her mouth. But with the shadowed figure advancing and the SUV edging closer, she had no choice. Anna climbed into the passenger seat, slamming the door behind her. The car roared to life as James slammed his foot on the gas. The tires screeched, water spraying as they sped away into the night. Her hands gripped the dashboard as the headlights of the SUV loomed larger in the rearview mirror. Who are they, James? She demanded, her voice breaking. Why are they after you? They're the reason I had to disappear, he said, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. And if they catch us, Anna? He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. The SUV's engine growled louder, closing the distance. Anna's heart pounded as she glanced out the back window. The danger wasn't just a story from James's past anymore. It was here.
And it was chasing them.
The SUV surged closer, its headlights glaring through the rain-slicked rear window. Anna's breath came in short, panicked gasps. "James, they're gaining on us," she shouted, gripping the edges of her seat. "I see it," he snapped, his jaw tight as he swerved onto a side street. The car jolted over a pothole, the tires skidding slightly on the wet asphalt. The SUV followed without hesitation, its engine roaring like a predator closing in on its prey. "Who are these people?" Anna demanded, her voice trembling. "What did you do to make them come after you?" James's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror, then back to the road. "They're not people you can reason with," he said, his voice clipped. "They're a syndicate. I owed them money. More than I could ever repay." Her stomach twisted. "What kind of money? What did you do?" James gritted his teeth, taking a sharp turn that sent Anna sliding against the door. "It started with a bad investment," he said. "I thought I could fix it, double the money back. But I borrowed from the wrong people, Anna. I got in over my head, and your solution was to fake your death." She shot back, anger cutting through her fear. James didn't answer immediately. The wipers thrashed against the rain as he sped through another intersection, narrowly missing a parked car. "It was the only way to protect you," he said finally, his voice low. "If they thought I was dead, you'd be safe. I didn't have a choice." Anna shook her head, tears stinging her eyes. "You keep saying that, but you had a choice, James. You could have told me the truth." The SUV rammed their bumper, jolting her forward in her seat. "Hold on," James shouted, gripping the wheel as the car fishtailed. The SUV was relentless, its headlights flooding the car with blinding light. Anna's heart raced as she watched the shadowy figures in the pursuing vehicle. "They're going to run us off the road," she cried. James's jaw tightened, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. "Not if I can help it." He yanked the wheel hard to the right, veering onto a narrow alley. The walls of old brick buildings closed in on either side, the space barely wide enough for their car. The SUV hesitated at the alley's entrance, its bulk too large to follow. For a brief, fleeting moment, Anna felt a flicker of hope. "They can't fit," she breathed, her voice trembling. But then she heard it. A screech of tires. The SUV backed out and took another route. "They're trying to cut us off," James said grimly, glancing at her. "We're not out of this yet." Anna's chest tightened as they burst out of the alley onto another rain-soaked street. Ahead, the SUV reappeared, skidding into view from a side road. It was waiting for them. Anna's scream caught in her throat as James slammed the brakes. The car screeched to a halt, spinning slightly as the SUV blocked their path. The doors of the black vehicle flew open, and two men stepped out. They were dressed in dark clothes, their faces shadowed by the dim streetlights. One of them held something in his hand. It gleamed coldly in the rain. A gun. Anna's pulse roared in her ears. "James," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I see it," he said, his tone deadly calm. He threw the car into reverse, slamming his foot on the gas. The car lurched backward, tires screeching. But before they could retreat, another set of headlights appeared behind them. A second vehicle. They were trapped. The car idled in the middle of the street, boxed in by the SUV ahead and the second vehicle behind. Anna's breathing quickened as she gripped the dashboard, her mind racing. James's hands were steady on the wheel, but she could see the tension in his jaw. "We're out of options," he muttered, scanning the surroundings. The men from the SUV approached, their movements slow, deliberate, like wolves circling their prey. One of them tapped the gun against the car's hood, the sound sharp and menacing in the rain-soaked night. "Get out," the man barked, his voice muffled through the glass.
"Now."
Anna's heart thudded painfully in her chest. "James, what do we do?" He didn't answer immediately. His eyes darted to her, a flicker of something she couldn't quite place. Guilt, perhaps, or regret. "Listen to me," he said, his voice low but urgent. "When I say go, you run. Don't look back. Just run as far as you can." Her eyes widened.
What? No.
I'm not leaving you. You don't have a choice, he snapped, his tone harsher than she'd ever heard. They're not after you. If you stay, you'll just be collateral damage. Tears pricked at her eyes as her hands clenched into fists. I'm not leaving you, James. You dragged me into this. And now I'm trying to get you out, he interrupted, his voice rising. The man outside banged on the window, his impatience evident. Clock's ticking, the man shouted. James leaned closer to her, his voice dropping to a whisper. Anna, please. For once, just trust me. Her chest tightened, torn between anger and fear. Before she could respond, James opened the driver's door. The cold night air rushed in, mingling with the scent of wet asphalt and exhaust fumes. He stepped out, his hands raised. Anna watched, her breath caught in her throat, as the men closed in on him. The man with the gun smirked. Smart move. James's eyes flicked to her, a silent plea in his gaze. And then, in one swift motion, he lunged at the man, his hands gripping the gun. Chaos erupted. The gun went off, the crack of the shot splitting the night. Anna screamed, the sound ripping from her throat as the two men wrestled in the rain. James shouted, his voice raw and desperate. Run, Anna. Now. Her body moved before her mind could catch up. She threw open the passenger door and bolted, the rain stinging her face as her feet pounded against the pavement. Behind her, the sounds of the struggle grew fainter. But James's voice echoed in her ears, sharp and haunting. Go, Anna. She ran into the night, the darkness swallowing her whole, unsure if she was fleeing toward freedom or deeper into danger. Anna ran until her legs burned, the sound of her pounding footsteps lost in the rhythm of the rain. The streets blurred around her, shadows shifting with every step, but she didn't dare look back. James's voice echoed in her mind, sharp and commanding. Run, Anna. Don't stop. She turned down an alley, the narrow walls offering a fleeting sense of shelter. Her breaths came in ragged gasps, and her soaked clothes clung to her skin. The night felt endless, each moment stretching into an eternity. Finally, she stopped, leaning against a cold, damp wall. The rain had slowed to a mist, and the distant hum of traffic seemed impossibly far away. Her thoughts raced as she tried to make sense of what had just happened. James was alive. He'd faked his death, built a new life, and now he was gone again. Anna's hand instinctively went to her phone. The screen was cracked from the chaos, but it still lit up, a fragile beacon in the dark. No messages, no calls. She wanted to believe that James would somehow find her, that he would explain everything, that he would be okay. But deep down, she knew the truth. He had made his choice, and she had to live with it. As she stood there, trembling in the cold, a faint sound caught her attention. The distant wail of sirens. Her heart clenched. The authorities. She didn't know if they were coming for her, for James, or for the aftermath of whatever had unfolded back there. But she knew she couldn't stay. Pushing herself off the wall, she forced her legs to move again, one step at a time. This time, she wasn't running in panic. She was walking with purpose. Anna didn't know where she was going, but she knew she had to keep moving. The James she once knew, the man she loved, the man she mourned, was gone. And the man who had stood before her tonight was a stranger. The only thing she could do now was start over. Alone. As the rain finally ceased and the first hint of dawn touched the horizon, Anna made a silent vow. No more running. No more chasing ghosts. Her life was hers to reclaim, and she would find a way to rebuild, even if it meant leaving the past behind forever.